And I get to college and there's still that stigma. I had a professor that taught a math class, and when I asked her for a calculator, she said, "Oh, we use our brains in this class, not calculators."
Every challenge holds a story. Every struggle is a spark. Welcome to A Legend Forged, where athletes, heroes, and fearless fighters of disability defy the odds and rewrite the rules. Learn to live an unfiltered life with the unstoppable Aron O'Dowd. A Legend Forged begins now.
Hello, and everybody, on today's episode of The Legend Forged. Today my guest has an invisible disability. From the start, people have told her that she could not go to college, get a bachelor's degree, get published, and get a job she wanted. Who would think that? And she's done this all and more and more and more. My guest, Michelle Steiner, has got published. She's overcome challenges and obstacles, and she keeps hitting and rocking and knocking out that ball, knocking it out of the ball. Hello, and welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you doing?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. Can you tell us what your invisible disability is?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability. I also have visual perception issues, but that's in my brain, not in my eyes. And I have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands.
Take us back to that moment when you discovered that you had a disability.
I first discovered that I had a learning disability right whenever I was in kindergarten. I can remember I was really struggling whenever I was in the classroom. I really had a lot of difficulty with counting, anything math related, tying my shoes, writing my name, and especially dot to dot pages. I thought I did them all correctly, and when I got them back, they were not correct. And my teacher, I was really fortunate that she recommended to my parents that I get tested for having one. And I do indeed have a disability. And I can remember my mom and dad, they were explaining that to me as a very small child, that I was going to have to repeat kindergarten the following year in a different school that was still in our district. And I can just remember, though, I was very fearful at that age. I just thought, okay, my parents will forget about it. I really didn't want to go to a different school. And I can just remember, even from the very start, I was very frustrated, and I just wanted to learn and be accepted like my peers.
How did it feel to know you were different?
That was really hard, especially in the beginning. I went to a very small conservative school district where if you fit in and you were one of them, then you were accepted. And it was really clear from the very beginning that I didn't fit in with them academically and socially. Academically, it was clear I struggled in the classroom. It was really clear that I went to learning support. I couldn't hide the fact that I had a disability. And I can just remember feeling really isolated, and I felt really alone. Like I really didn't understand at that point why I had this. And I also can remember just thinking at that age, very young age, of despair, thinking that things were never going to get better in my life. And I was always going to struggle with having one with my disability.
So was it only maths and learning you struggled with?
Well, we later found out that I had limited hand dexterity, and that was something that they didn't know very much about when I was in school. I had bad handwriting and really struggled with that. And the vision perception we knew about, my parents did, but they didn't know how it was going to affect me in my adult life. When I was young, it was just gym class was a nightmare. If I had a ball that would go in my field of vision, I would blink anytime an object would come there. And I was clumsy. And we just thought, okay, sports definitely is not your thing. But when I was a teenager, my parents had me wait a year before I got my license. And before we even entertained the possibility of getting it, they wanted me to wait. They thought, well, maybe her brain just needs an extra year to catch up, maybe compared to her peers. And they had me do little tasks during that time. We lived out in the country and there was this field, and my parents had me mow the field. And instead of making beautiful, perfect straight lines, I ended up making circles. So I affectionately say I know where crop circles come from. And I almost ended up running into the family garage. And thankfully, my mom was in the car with me, or else I would have done that. And at that point, we thought, okay, this definitely needs to be looked at because uh, we got to see if I could drive or not. This was going to be a possibility. And I passed every single test that they gave me. My eyes were fine. My vision was good. I knew what to do if the car broke down. I understood the responsibilities of maintaining a vehicle. Everything was great until we got to the end when they gave me a visual perception test. And at that point, I did not pass that. And the person who examined me said, based upon this, we just can't recommend that you get your license. And it was just like 100 pounds were lifted off of me because I knew that if I drove, that I could possibly hurt myself or somebody else. And I knew that that was just something that a risk that I didn't want to take. And even the hand dexterity diagnosis didn't come until I was an adult. And the light bulbs all went off when that came back, because I started to realize, oh, that's why things fall out of my hands. That's why it's really hard for me to be able to open up jars and to be able to use twist ties, and why using a manual can opener is like trying to operate a spaceship.
I bet you're like can boom, boom, boom,
Uh-huh.
open.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Wow. And how did you overcome opening your tin of Darkins or tuna or beans or something?
One of the things that I've just seen that has helped me, and it also helps other people, is just a lot. There's a lot more technology that we had than when I was growing up. Well, when I first moved out on my own, I got an electric can opener. That made my life a lot easier. And that's just one of the things that I use. I have jar openers now and bottle openers, and there's just things that I can do. I can't tell time on the face of a clock, an analog clock. So I use my Fitbit or another digital device. And there's apps for things like trying to figure out how much to tip your server. And I think it's those uh, things that come up are ways that it just doesn't benefit me. This benefits other people that don't even have disabilities, but it makes their lives easier if they want to use them.
For sure. And when you were growing up and you had the visual problem, were you in front of the TV where your eyes met the screen of the TV trying to watch your cartoons?
No, see, that has not really affected my vision very much. It's more how I perceive um, objects, or it's more how, let's just say that if I was driving and there was another car in front of me, well, it would be hard for me to know how much space to give that person. And it would be really hard for me to coordinate all the movements with that. It's difficult if I'm trying to, I will also confuse my right from my left. That's another part of that. So it's not necessarily with the eyes; it's more with the brain. Another great example of this is if I'm out in public and I have to there's an escalator. I can't use that, or not very well. It's a real struggle. So I figured out it's better to avoid it because I can't tell whenever I'm about ready to put my foot out whether when to step on because the stairs move too quickly.
I know. Why can't they move slow? It's not fair.
Yeah. But there's other ways that we can do things.
Mhm.
And that's just something that I've always figured out in life.
So you're a teenager and you want to drive and so on, but college, how important was education to you in your teenager years?
Education was really important to me. I knew that I wanted to go to college, and I was doing really well in my high school classes. I was in all regular ed classes except for math at a resource room, and I was making honor roll, was doing really well. I wasn't taking any AP classes at that time, and my parents really wanted to set me up for success. They knew that I if they would put me in some of those classes, that would be something that might be a little too much for me. So it was mainly academic classes and having a learning support math. But I always knew I wanted to go to college, and I knew it was going to be a struggle. I certainly knew math was always going to be that challenge, and I also thought it's probably is going to be hard in my other courses as well. And I can remember I was not alone in those fears. I had a learning support teacher who told me, I don't think you can go to college because of your difficulty with math. And she suggested going into a trade school while I was already in high school. And nothing at the school interested me. It was a lot of trades, and some of those things people would think, oh, that's the easy way out. And for me, I think I just would have struggled a lot more with that because just certain things with having the disability would have been 10 times harder with that. And I didn't have the passion to do it. So I knew that going to college was my best option. I also faced even more stigma with wanting to go to college. I had a psychiatrist who told me that I would most likely not go beyond community college. And I get to college and there's still that stigma. I had a professor that taught a math class, and when I asked her for a calculator, she said, "Oh, we use our brains in this class, not calculators." And I had an advisor who told me I was going to have limited job choices when I graduated. And my peers, they didn't really value accommodations. They figured that what I was doing was giving me an unfair advantage and that it was cheating.
How did you overcome all these stigmas and say you can't do this, you can't do that? Because that would probably bring you to a space where I can't, so I must believe it. But you didn't. You overcame it. So tell us, how did you do that?
Well, I definitely was not a very positive person for a lot of years. I have to admit that. And I went forward afraid. I didn't know sometimes that things were going to work out for me at community college or even when I got to university. But I went forward and I just did it afraid. And I also eventually started using the accommodations and I was able to pass, and I was able to graduate with an associate's degree in early childhood education. But when I went back to university, this is when I knew a little more what I was doing. I found a program that had the least amount of math and science possible. It had disability accommodations. And this time I was not afraid to use them. I understood there was always going to be that stigma surrounding them, but I couldn't control what anyone else thought. I had to move forward and do what was best for me. I had a note taker. I had extra test time on my tests. I had tutoring when I needed it. And most importantly, I advocated for myself. I was very confident to go up to professors and say, "Hi, my name is Michelle. I have a learning disability, and these are the services I'll be needing in your class." And I had a great majority of my professors wanted to help and were really understanding and supportive. A few didn't quite get the memo, but I mean, you're always going to have that. And I was able that time to really do even better. My grades really improved, and I made dean's list for a semester, and I was able to graduate with a bachelor's degree.
How did that feel to have your own bachelor's degree?
It feels amazing. I think that was one of the most healing things that I've ever done. And it just gave me that confidence boost because for so long I was going forward and I was going through and doing everything I was supposed to, but I didn't have that confidence and that happiness. And once I got that, that is what I needed to be able to have that confidence going forward. And my disability didn't leave me when I graduated, but I had this renewed sense in me, in myself, that I could do it.
You lacking confidence? No, no, no. But why were you not lacking? Why were you lacking confidence?
I was lacking confidence because being a young person, I didn't understand. I didn't know anybody else that had a disability. I didn't know, well, I knew other people that had them, but nobody else. I didn't know anyone that had a math learning disability. Everybody I knew had a reading disability, or they might have had other kinds of disability. I did, however, have my parents that were always supportive. And I also had great friends. And sometimes that was a really nice thing too, because none of them could solve my problems, but I remember going out with friends and I could talk to them about what was happening, but I could also laugh and forget about that sometimes too. And I think that was a really key thing as well. And I think it was just looking at the different kinds of supports that I had at school and using them was a big thing too.
You got published. How did that feel?
That was another amazing
Was it?
experience because
Tell us.
yes, reading and writing has always been a really big part of my life. When I was little, my dad would read me stories every night before I went to bed. At around second or third grade, he found a story about a dinosaur that I wrote. And he said, "Wow, this is really good." And I didn't think there was anything that I was good at up until that point. I thought I'm bad at everything. And when he said that, that just gave me a boost of confidence. And reading and writing became my world. And especially when I was being bullied, that's really what got me through a lot of really hard things. And I can remember there was an arts group just outside of our school district when I was a teenager. And I started hanging out with some kids that were from that group because I wasn't really connected with any of the kids I went to school with. And that gave me a boost because I had that acceptance. No one knew my story. And then after I transitioned out of that group, I found an adult writing group. People were just a few years older than I was. And they encouraged me to write about having a disability. And I thought, oh no, that is way too personal. I don't want to share that. So I wrote some bad poetry and some other things that I wouldn't want to read today. And over 30 some years, we're still in each other's lives. And we meet once a month to talk about our writing. And that was just so key and so important to me. And then when I finally got that courage to write about having a disability was when my husband and I moved into our house and I could not unlock our front door with my limited hand dexterity. And I was so frustrated and so upset. I decided to write about it. There was a call on the mighty, what's a seemingly easy task for others, but it's really hard with your disability. And I wrote about it and I was so happy when it got published and I had a good response. And that encouraged me to write other articles and to be able to start my own blog. And if I just I have a lot of people that say, well, that's my story. And I thought I was the only person. And other than getting my bachelor's degree, this was another really big thing that really helped me to heal.
You take photos and you do photography, but tell us how you got into that.
I can also remember that was a key thing with my writing group. I took a picture at prom of a tree at our venue, and all my peers asked me, well, why'd you take a picture of a tree? But when I showed it to this older woman in our group, she said, this shows perspective. And I didn't consider myself an artist for all those years. I thought, I can't draw a straight line. I certainly can't make things look good. I can't sketch. And I had so many arguments with a friend years ago that I said, I'm not an artist. He goes, yes, you are. You are. And I can remember I was at a family wedding and we stopped at a cemetery and I took a picture of an angel. They had these beautiful angel statues. And I had another friend that looked at and said, wow, this is really good. And she was really particular. If she said something was good, it was. And I decided, okay, I'm going to enter these into an art show. And I got an honorable mention. And that just encouraged me to enter into more shows. And what really started to take off with that too was I'm not able to drive because of my disability. And I'm very lucky to have a ride to work with my husband. And I have a sweet coworker that takes me home at the end of the day. But whenever I don't have a ride, I get that chance I have to walk. And I've started to notice things that other people might miss while they're driving. I get a chance to see flowers. I literally get to stop and smell the roses. And people tell me that I bring out details in flowers that other people will miss. And rather than being really sad that I don't get a chance to have a car and to drive, there's so many things I would miss. And I get that opportunity to just go out there and take those pictures of flowers.
Wow. Wait, you work? You have a job,
I do. Yes.
You do? What is it?
I'm a teacher's aide or a paraeducator. I work with students who have disabilities and some who don't. And I help them. I help the teacher and I help the students in the classroom. I always give my big disclaimer at the beginning of the school year. I cannot help you with math. That is about the only thing I really can't do. But I think it's just so amazing because when I do that, I get a chance to come full circle and to help others that have disabilities. And sometimes it's like hearing a recording of myself at that age. I have people that'll say, I hate my disability. I wish I didn't have it. And I get that chance to go in and say, it's not a bad thing to have a disability. And I also show them how to advocate. A lot of times I have scared kids that don't know how to ask for help on things. And I get that chance to go over and to be able to help them. And I always say that my students will one day leave me and hopefully graduate. And for so many of them, though, their disability is going to stay. So it's so important that they know how to advocate for themselves and what strategies to use so they can be successful and make their dreams come true.
I bet you wish you had a Michelle when you were young trying to say, it's okay, you can do this. Your disability is your superpower, you know?
Exactly. I do.
What inspires you, Michelle?
I think what really inspires me, a lot of things in nature definitely do. Just going there and seeing beautiful flowers that are just blooming. Some of them are old favorites in our neighborhood. They come up year after year. And then sometimes somebody will plant something new and just seeing that. I think sometimes working with my students is also inspiring. I might have a student that is really struggling in the classroom and I get to make that connection with them. Sometimes maybe the teacher doesn't quite understand what's going on or even the student. So I get to go over and say, all right, as long as it's not math, if you don't understand this, we're going to have to kind of come back and meet up later and go over this together. And they start to trust me. And I get to make that connection with them. And I honestly don't think that if I didn't have a disability, I'd be able to make that connection or to have that empathy for others.
This is something I experienced in my life and may experience your life.
Mhm.
Trust is hard and difficult. Is that something you experienced in your own life?
It can be really hard to trust somebody, especially with having one, because we never know how someone's going to respond. I think that's the biggest thing. I never know if I work with different people, how somebody might respond if I tell them I need an accommodation at work. That can be that can be difficult. And it can also it was also difficult in relationships to be able to trust other people. I can just remember I had a really bad relationship, a few of them. And I think before I met my husband, and the worst one I think was whenever I was breaking up with my boyfriend, and he knew me. We went to school together, and he was saying, "Oh, I think you could drive if you wanted to, and I'm really tired of taking you places." And I just think that it's really hard sometimes, especially to put that trust because people don't always know that I have a disability when they see me. So it can be really difficult to just know how someone else is going to respond.
And there's a sentence I heard you say in this conversation, and I don't like using say, "Hey, I'm visually impaired and I can't do this. Can you do that?" But yet, you know, my disability is as invisible as yours. But if I look left or right, you can see I have a visual impairment. But you
Mhm.
probably like yourself. I wish I didn't have to say I have a disability. I'm just normal, you know.
Sometimes that can be hard to have that kind of conversation. And it does give me that privilege to not share, but there are times where I have to. And I always think it is interesting that you know how somebody is going to react, or maybe after you know how they react. Well, you can't predict that, but I think once you know if they're not okay with it, then that's just something that maybe you don't want to have a relationship with that person with that. I know when my husband, I knew that he was the right guy because on our first date, I told him I had a disability, and he said, "Well, how does it make you feel?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I this is definitely somebody that I wanna be with."
For sure. And I think the world should not care if if we have an invisible impairment or not. We're still a human being, you know.
Yeah, exactly. We're still people, we're still humans, and yeah, and everybody has worth and value.
Do you have to plan your day when you get up to in the morning to when you go to bed?
I do have to have an idea of what we are going to be doing. I have sort of a flexible routine with that, but there are times I know I have to leave, and I have to make sure that, we're ready, and my husband knows, and we're both on the same page that I have to be at work at this time. During the summer, it's a little more flexible because I'm off, so I can just go to the gym whenever they have class, or if I miss class, I can just go work out in the fitness center. But there are times where we do have to plan things out. I have to make sure that I'm rested and that I have everything kind of laid out, and to be organized to know, okay, you're going here, I'm going to this place, and just figuring those things out. So I think that's important.
If you had the unlimited resources and you got the opportunity to create impact and change in the world of disability, what would you think that looked like?
I think one of the things that I would love to do is to create a social, like, nonprofit for a lot of people that had disabilities, with places where people could meet up and have like coffee and have different kinds of activities. I hear from a lot of people that they don't have friends or they don't have family. I can remember I did a show with somebody years ago, and it was during Christmas. And when they asked, "Oh, if you could get any gift for Christmas, what would it be?" And one of the participants said, "I just wish I could have a friend." And there's just so many people that I work with, or that I might interact with, and they don't really have that support system. So I think that if I had the unlimited resources, that would be one of the things that I would definitely love to do.
People ask me, Aaron, if you got a cure tomorrow, would you take it to end your disability? If someone threw that question back at you, what would your answer be?
I don't think I would. I think that the way everything in my life has worked out, I mean, there are times where it is inconvenient in my life, and it would be a lot easier. But I can't imagine a life other than the one that I have. And I just feel so blessed for everything that I've been given and the opportunities that have come up with that. But I think for a convenience factor, that would definitely be something that I would, be up for. But other than that, I really can't imagine another life but the one I've been given.
If there was one thing you wish you could change or advice, what would it be?
I think the one thing that I would change is other people's reactions, because really the disability doesn't give me a lot of issues, but a lot of times it can be the reactions of maybe of other people. Um, Sometimes people might shame me for having a disability, or for things that I can't do, or think to myself, well, you should just be able to overcome it. Can't you have somebody teach you, or it's all in your head? And it's my disability is simply does what it does, and it does create difficulties, but I found ways to be able to work around that. But I think sometimes the hardest part, my wish would be that people could be accepting and could be understanding, regardless of somebody's disability, or not.
Michelle, what would be your one piece of advice that you'd love to share to the audience to empower people?
My advice would be that success doesn't always come in the package that you expect, but sometimes it comes in something even better.
Wow, I love it. Where can we find you?
You can find me at my blog, www.michellesmission.com.
What is your mission?
My mission is to encourage, empower, and educate people with and without disabilities.
I love it. I love it. Wow, like, the world's gonna be impressed. And is so you're just creating this uniformed aspect of you're just a normal person. So let's collaborate.
Yes, exactly.
Cool, Michelle. I could spend hours speaking to you and sharing experiences, and you could be sharing your experiences. But you're a superstar and hero, and I look forward to reading and seeing more where your journey goes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There you go, everyone. Your disability is not your disability. It's your different ability. You can do anything you want, even though the world says I can't. Remember, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to find out more people like Michelle to say, hey, I have a disability, but actually I'm forging the legend to be who I need to be in the world. So remember, tune in at Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to see how the superheroes conquer the world.